It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Those words from Niccolò Machiavelli are not a call to cruelty. They are a reminder that human nature responds more consistently to fear than to affection. This may sound harsh, but it is brutally true. When we talk about power, we are really talking about control over perception. People admire kindness, but rarely respect it when it stands alone. They admire strength because it creates certainty. Psychology shows us that the human mind is wired to follow signals of authority, and authority often carries a cold edge. Leaders who try to please everyone soon discover that gratitude is short-lived while disappointment is permanent. To be cold-blooded does not mean to lack humanity. It means being able to separate decisions from emotions when the two collide. In the world of power, hesitation costs opportunities, and mercy without calculation often breeds rebellion. A leader who cannot act decisively when threatened is eventually destroyed by those who can. Machiavelli understood a truth that still unsettles us today. People are unreliable when their interests change. Loyalty is rarely permanent, and morality is often a stage play for appearances. To succeed in a world ruled by shifting motives, you must learn to detach, to act with clarity, and sometimes to be feared rather than adored. The cold-blooded survive because they accept human nature instead of fantasizing about it. Now let's get started. Number 1. Power rewards detachment. Imagine a chess player who grows attached to one piece, say the knight. No matter what happens, he protects it at all costs. He hesitates to sacrifice it even when the move would secure victory. What happens? He loses. Not because the knight was useless, but because his emotions blinded him from seeing the larger picture. Power works exactly the same way. Machiavelli understood that attachment weakens leaders. Detachment does not mean you stop caring about people or goals. It means you stop letting feelings dictate your judgment. In psychology, this is called emotional regulation. Leaders who cannot regulate themselves become prey to manipulation because others can pull their strings through guilt, love, or anger. Take the workplace as an example. A manager who is overly attached to being liked by employees will avoid making tough decisions. Maybe they will not fire someone who consistently underperforms because they want to be seen as kind. The result is that the whole team suffers. The cold-blooded manager, on the other hand, weighs the situation without personal feelings clouding it. They act based on results, not attachment. Over time, that detachment earns them respect, even if people complain in the short term. Philosophy also reminds us of this truth. The Stoics believed in focusing only on what is within your control. Detachment is not indifference. It is strength. When you are not bound by your own emotions or the expectations of others, you become free to make clear decisions. The powerful are not the ones who cling to every relationship or idea. They are the ones who can let go when the moment demands it. Detachment gives clarity. Clarity gives power. Number 2. Sentiment is a weak currency in politics. Think of politics not just as governments, but as every arena where power plays out. Workplaces, families, friendships, communities. In all these places, sentiment often masquerades as strength. People assume loyalty, love, or good intentions will be enough to hold positions of influence. Machiavelli shatters that illusion. He reminds us that sentiment is the weakest form of currency because it is unstable and easily replaced by self-interest. Psychology backs this up. Humans are not consistent creatures. Our loyalties shift with our needs. A friend who praises you today may envy you tomorrow. An employee who swears loyalty may jump ship when a competitor offers more. A citizen who worships a leader may revolt when policies no longer serve their immediate desires. Sentiment binds only until a stronger incentive comes along. Take a modern example. A politician runs a campaign on charisma and love for the people. The crowd cheers and adores them. But once the economy collapses, the same crowd turns vicious. Sentiment has no permanence because emotions are volatile. People act not from what they once felt, but from what they feel right now. Cold-blooded leaders understand this and build systems of power on more durable foundations like fear, control of resources, and strategic alliances. Philosophically, this truth is uncomfortable because we like to believe loyalty is sacred. But Machiavelli would argue that loyalty lasts only as long as it is profitable for the other person. That is not cynicism. It is an observation of human nature. In personal life, think about relationships. If you are always the one sacrificing while the other person takes, you are relying on sentiment to protect you. That is fragile. The day the other person's interests change, your sacrifices mean nothing. A more balanced, detached approach ensures you are not enslaved by one-sided emotional investments. Power, therefore, cannot be sustained by sentiment alone. It must be anchored in structure, strategy, and the capacity to act decisively when the tides shift. Sentiment is sweet in the moment, but as a currency of power, it is counterfeit. The cold-blooded do not reject sentiment entirely. They simply recognize its limits and never bet everything on it. Number 3, cold-blooded means clarity, not cruelty. The word cold-blooded often makes people uneasy. They picture someone ruthless, heartless, and eager to inflict pain. But Machiavelli never suggested that power belongs to sadists. His lesson is more precise. To be cold-blooded is not to be cruel. It is to see clearly and to act without the fog of guilt, hesitation, or emotional confusion. Think about moments in life when hesitation has cost you. Perhaps you had a chance to speak up in a meeting, but fear of how others would feel silenced you. Or maybe you held on to a failing relationship because you did not want to hurt the other person. In both cases, emotions blurred your clarity. You avoided short-term discomfort, but you paid with long-term damage. Cold-blooded clarity would have cut through the haze. Psychology has a name for this tendency. It is called affective forecasting, our human habit of exaggerating how bad or good future feelings will be. We avoid making tough decisions because we imagine unbearable guilt or pain. In reality, those emotions rarely last as long or hit as hard as we think. The cold-blooded leader knows this and acts despite the emotional noise. Philosophy echoes the same truth. The Stoics taught that what hurts us most is not events themselves, but the meanings we attach to them. When a leader detaches from those meanings, they see situations as they are, not as their emotions color them. That clarity allows them to make decisions that others cannot. Consider a CEO who must close down a failing branch of the company. Hundreds of jobs are at stake. If the CEO lets guilt drive them, they may keep the branch open, drain resources, and eventually risk the survival of the entire company. If they are cold-blooded, they act decisively. They close the branch to save the larger organization. From the outside, the choice may look cruel, but in reality, it was clarity that prevented a greater collapse. Being cold-blooded, then, is not about cruelty. It is about removing the blindfold of emotion and illusion so you can see the truth for what it is. Cruelty destroys, clarity preserves. Number 4. The compassionate leader is the easiest to replace. Compassion is a beautiful trait in human relationships, but in the arena of power it becomes dangerous if it stands alone. A leader who relies purely on compassion is loved briefly but replaced easily. Why? Because compassion without authority turns into dependency, and dependency breeds resentment rather than respect. Imagine a workplace where a manager is endlessly compassionate. They avoid conflict. They forgive repeated mistakes. They bend rules to accommodate people's feelings. At first, the team loves them. Who would not want a boss who never punishes and always understands? But as time passes, the same employees begin to take advantage. Deadlines are ignored, standards are lowered, respect is eroded. And when the organization looks for stronger leadership, this manager is quietly replaced by someone who can impose order. Compassion gave them temporary affection but no lasting power. Psychology explains this dynamic. People are drawn to authority figures who can create boundaries and maintain structure. Too much leniency triggers what researchers call the paradox of tolerance. When there are no limits, individuals feel less safe, not more. A compassionate leader who cannot enforce consequences breeds chaos. People may thank them with words, but their actions will show disregard. Philosophically, Machiavelli warns us that humans are fickle. They admire kindness only when it costs them nothing. But when survival or success is at stake, they flock to strength. History remembers rulers who commanded respect, not those who merely offered comfort. The Roman emperors who ruled with an iron hand lasted longer than the emperors who tried to please the Senate with endless concessions. Even in personal life, the pattern repeats. The overly compassionate parent who shields their child from every discomfort raises someone unprepared for reality. When that child faces the real world, they resent the parent for making them weak. Compassion without balance turns into betrayal. A leader must know when to show humanity and when to withhold it. Compassion is powerful when it is rare and strategic, but if it is constant, it loses value and makes the leader dispensable. Cold-blooded clarity teaches us this. It is better to be respected for strength than replaced for softness. Number 5. Fear lasts longer than love. Love is fragile. It is warm when it is fed, but it cools quickly when circumstances change. Fear, on the other hand, burns itself into memory. This is why Machiavelli argued that while it is ideal to be both loved and feared, if you must choose, fear lasts longer. Think of relationships in everyday life. A friend may love you when you are generous, when you show up for them, when you meet their needs. But the moment you cannot deliver, their love fades or shifts to someone else. Love is transactional, whether we like to admit it or not. Fear, however, leaves a deeper imprint. A boss who is excessively kind is remembered fondly only as long as they remain useful. A boss who once displayed decisive and intimidating authority is remembered for years. The memory of fear makes people think twice before crossing boundaries. Psychology explains this through the concept of loss aversion. Humans are more sensitive to potential pain than to potential pleasure. We avoid losses more fiercely than we pursue gains. Love offers pleasure, but fear warns of pain. Pain dominates the brain, and so fear roots itself more deeply. Philosophy echoes this truth. The ancients often warned against trusting affection to guide nations. Empires did not survive on goodwill. They survived on discipline enforced through fear of consequences. Even in modern politics, people may cheer for a leader they love, but when crisis strikes, they demand the leader who inspires fear because fear creates order. Consider history. Many emperors and kings who sought to be adored ended up assassinated or overthrown because affection does not stop betrayal. Yet those who cultivated fear maintained control far longer, even if they were hated. Hatred can coexist with obedience, but disappointment in love leads to abandonment. In personal life too, the principle applies. A teacher who tries only to be loved by students loses authority when discipline is required, but the teacher who establishes a healthy fear of consequences is respected even years later. Students may not have liked them at the time, but they remember and value them in adulthood. Love can fade with time, mood, or convenience. Fear hardens into memory. This is why, in power, fear endures where love disappears. Number 6. Morality is a costume for power. Morality feels like an eternal truth, a universal compass of right and wrong. But in the arena of power, morality is often less about truth and more about appearance. Machiavelli recognized that morality is a costume, worn when it benefits the leader, and discarded when it threatens survival. This is not cynicism, it is observation. Look at politics today. Leaders make speeches about honesty, integrity, and justice. They preach fairness and equality to the masses. But behind closed doors, decisions are made based on survival, influence, and advantage. A leader may declare war in the name of freedom, but the hidden motive may be resources or strategic dominance. The costume of morality makes the move acceptable to the crowd. Without the costume, the leader would be seen for what they truly are, someone pursuing power. Psychology explains this through impression management. Human beings instinctively shape their actions to appear virtuous in front of others, even when their motives are selfish. Leaders are not immune to this. In fact, they perfect the skill. By presenting themselves as moral, they secure loyalty and silence criticism. People want to believe their rulers are good, so they accept the costume without looking beneath it. Philosophy has long wrestled with this duality. Plato dreamed of philosopher kings who rule with virtue. Machiavelli stripped away the dream and exposed reality. He argued that rulers who cling blindly to morality often end up destroyed by those who are willing to bend it. A leader who refuses to lie, deceive, or manipulate when necessary becomes vulnerable to those who do. Consider an everyday example. Imagine a company executive who prides themselves on transparency. They share every piece of information with employees, even when the company is struggling. At first, the honesty is admired. But when morale collapses and employees panic, the transparency harms the business. Another executive who filters the truth and presents a confident front saves the company. Which one appears moral? Which one survives? Morality and power is not about what is true. It is about what works. Leaders wear the costume because people need the illusion of virtue. Underneath, cold-blooded clarity drives their choices. Those who cannot master this balance either lose power or are destroyed by those who can. Number 7. People judge outcomes, not intentions. We like to believe that good intentions matter. Parents tell children that what counts is trying your best. Society praises effort, empathy, and sincerity, but in the arena of power, intentions are almost irrelevant. People do not remember what you meant to do. They remember what you achieved. Machiavelli knew this, and psychology confirms it. Think about a surgeon. If the surgeon operates with the purest intentions but loses the patient, nobody praises their sincerity. The outcome erases the intention. The family will not say, "At least the doctor meant well." They will say, "The doctor failed." Now picture another surgeon who may lack warmth or bedside charm, but saves lives consistently. That surgeon is admired, trusted, and followed. The difference is not intention, it is outcome. In leadership, the same principle applies. A leader may speak passionately about justice, fairness, and progress. They may truly mean it, but if their policies fail, if the economy collapses or the people suffer, no one remembers their intentions. They are branded as failures. Meanwhile, a leader who may not care deeply about justice but manages to deliver stability, security, and prosperity will be remembered as strong and effective. Psychology has a term for this bias: outcome bias. We judge decisions not by the reasoning behind them, but by the results they produce. Human memory clings to results because results affect survival. A failed intention does not feed a family or protect a community. Outcomes do. Philosophically, this forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. Morality often excuses intentions, but history only records consequences. Leaders who cling to the purity of their motives but neglect results become forgotten martyrs. Leaders who produce tangible outcomes, even if by ruthless methods, are remembered as visionaries or saviors. Even in personal life, this truth reveals itself. Imagine promising a friend to help them move houses but failing to show up because something came up. Your good intention does not matter. Your absence does. Or think of a parent who intends to provide but never follows through. The child grows up remembering neglect, not the parent's silent wishes. Number 8. Forgiveness is a luxury of the strong. Forgiveness sounds noble. Religions preach it, families teach it, and society celebrates it. But in the raw reality of power, forgiveness is not a virtue available to everyone. It is a luxury that only the strong can afford. For the weak, forgiveness is often disguised fear. Consider a manager who has little authority. An employee disrespects them in a meeting. If the manager forgives, people see not compassion, but weakness. The forgiveness is interpreted as an inability to act. Soon, others test boundaries. Chaos spreads. In contrast, a powerful leader with unquestioned authority may forgive a disrespectful act and be praised as magnanimous. Their forgiveness carries weight because everyone knows they had the power to punish but chose not to. Psychology helps explain this. Social dominance theory shows that in any hierarchy, displays of leniency are respected only when the leader's power is undeniable. When a strong figure forgives, people see confidence. When a weak figure forgives, people see insecurity. Forgiveness has meaning only when punishment was a real option. Philosophically, this links to the concept of mercy in rulers. Machiavelli observed that mercy can strengthen a prince's reputation if it is exercised selectively, but a ruler who forgives everyone undermines their own authority. The mercy of the powerless is not mercy at all, it is surrender. Take a historical example. Julius Caesar famously pardoned many of his enemies after civil wars. This forgiveness elevated his image as a godlike leader who was above petty revenge. But Caesar could afford it. He had the legions, the wealth, and the aura of invincibility. In contrast, a minor leader forgiving their rivals would have been seen as incapable of retaliation, inviting more rebellion. In everyday life, this principle is clear too. A teacher who never disciplines students and constantly forgives misbehavior loses all control of the classroom. Students interpret it not as kindness but as weakness. But a teacher with firm authority who occasionally forgives earns admiration because the students know that discipline is the norm and forgiveness is rare. The lesson is simple. Forgiveness is not inherently virtuous. It gains its power from context. Only the strong can forgive without being destroyed. For the weak, forgiveness is often the mask of helplessness. Number 9. The enemy you spare becomes the enemy who returns stronger. One of Machiavelli's coldest but most realistic lessons is that an enemy left alive often returns with sharper claws. Mercy without calculation feels noble in the moment, but it is often the seed of future destruction. Power does not forgive forgetfulness. History is littered with examples. When powerful rulers spared rivals in the name of mercy, those rivals almost always regrouped and came back more dangerous. Julius Caesar's decision to pardon Brutus and Cassius after earlier conflicts is one of history's most striking examples. His enemies repaid that generosity with daggers. The very men he spared later led the conspiracy that ended his life. The mercy felt honorable, but the cost was fatal. Psychology explains why spared enemies become dangerous. People who are defeated but not eliminated often develop what is called a revenge obsession. Neuroscience shows that the brain releases dopamine when imagining payback. Sparing an enemy does not earn their gratitude. It fuels their obsession with redemption. They brood, gather resources, and wait for the perfect chance to strike. Even in everyday life, this plays out. Think of the workplace. If a manager discovers an employee secretly undermining them but chooses to let it go in the spirit of kindness, the employee rarely reforms. Instead, they learn they can get away with treachery. They become bolder and more strategic, and when the next chance arrives, they strike harder. What was once a minor problem becomes a full rebellion. Philosophically, Machiavelli's advice is unsettling but clear. Cruelty, when necessary, must be decisive. A small wound invites resentment. A final blow removes the threat altogether. Incomplete action is the true cruelty because it prolongs suffering and creates endless cycles of conflict. This does not mean leaders must destroy everyone in their path. It means they must calculate carefully. If an enemy is spared, it must be because sparing them benefits the leader's strategy, not because of blind compassion. Otherwise, mercy is self-sabotage. Cold-blooded clarity demands this understanding. The enemy you leave behind does not rest. They rebuild, they harden, and when they return, they are no longer the same enemy you spared. They are stronger, angrier, and far more dangerous. Number 10. People admire strength but exploit kindness. It is one of the hardest truths to accept. People respect strength even when they dislike it, but they exploit kindness the moment they sense it has no limits. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago, and modern psychology continues to prove him right. Think of a strict teacher. Students may complain about their rules, their firmness, their refusal to bend, but those same students later look back with respect. They often admit that the teacher's discipline shaped them. Now think of the overly kind teacher who allowed everything, forgave everything, and bent rules to be liked. At the time, students loved them, but in memory, they are dismissed as ineffective and forgettable. The difference lies in strength versus kindness. Psychology explains this through dominance and submission cues. Humans, like other social animals, are wired to test boundaries. When kindness is unlimited, people interpret it as weakness. They push further, they take more, and they begin to lose respect for the giver. When strength is present, even if it is firm and uncomfortable, it signals safety. Strength commands attention and sets clear rules that protect order. In relationships, the same pattern unfolds. The partner who is endlessly kind and forgiving is often taken for granted. Their kindness becomes invisible, even irritating, because it offers no challenge and no backbone. But the partner who is kind selectively, yet firm in their boundaries, becomes deeply respected. Strength gives kindness weight. Without strength, kindness is treated as a resource to be drained. Philosophically, this truth forces us to see human nature without illusions. People are not naturally noble. They are self-interested. They admire strength because it reassures them that someone is capable of protecting order and delivering results. Kindness without strength feels pleasant in the moment, but eventually becomes an opportunity to exploit. Machiavelli would say that kindness is useful only when it serves strategy, not when it becomes a ruler's defining trait. In power, then, the lesson is clear. Be kind, but let that kindness be rare and deliberate. Use it as a tool, not a weakness. People admire strength because it commands respect. They exploit kindness because it allows them to. Number 11. The world respects those who can withstand isolation. Power is lonely. Anyone who tells you otherwise has never carried real responsibility. Machiavelli understood that those who seek influence must be prepared to walk alone. The ability to withstand isolation is not just a trait of strong leaders, it is the foundation of their authority. Why is this so? Because decisive action often alienates people. When a leader chooses the path that benefits the long-term but angers the short-term crowd, they are left standing alone. Most people cannot handle this. They crumble under disapproval. They beg for reassurance. They dilute their vision to win back affection. In doing so, they forfeit power. Psychology offers a clear explanation. Humans are social animals. Our brains are wired for belonging. Rejection activates the same pain centers as physical injury. Most people avoid isolation at all costs, but leaders who endure it develop psychological resilience. They train themselves to tolerate disapproval, to sit with the discomfort of loneliness, and to keep moving forward. That ability makes them rare, and rarity commands respect. Think of innovators like Galileo. He stood alone against the church when he claimed the earth revolved around the sun. His isolation was brutal, yet history remembers him as a pioneer. Or take Abraham Lincoln, who endured constant criticism during the Civil War. He carried the weight of the nation while being vilified by half of it. Today he is remembered not for being liked in his time, but for his ability to endure isolation for a larger purpose. Even in personal life, this plays out. Imagine someone who breaks away from a toxic group of friends. At first, they are mocked or ignored. But if they persist and build a better life, those same people later look back with admiration. The one who endured loneliness proved they were not dependent on the herd. Philosophically, this connects to existentialism. Thinkers like Nietzsche argued that greatness requires walking paths where no one else dares to go. The herd clings together for comfort. The leader ventures into isolation and earns respect because they went where others would not. The world does not remember those who blended in. It remembers those who withstood the cold silence of being alone. That endurance is the price of true power. Number 12. Emotions are weapons when controlled, weakness when uncontrolled. Most people see emotions as private experiences, but in the arena of power they are signals. They either become tools you use to influence others, or traps that others use to control you. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology gave us the language. Emotions, when mastered, become weapons. When left unchecked, they expose weakness. Think about anger. A leader who explodes in rage at every inconvenience becomes predictable and easy to manipulate. Subordinates can provoke them to make mistakes, but a leader who unleashes anger rarely, at chosen moments, instills fear and urgency. The emotion, once controlled, becomes strategic. The difference is discipline. Psychology shows that humans are highly responsive to emotional cues. Studies on emotional contagion reveal that moods spread quickly through groups. A calm leader in a crisis stabilizes an entire team. A panicked leader creates chaos. The leader's control over their own emotional signals can determine whether a group survives or collapses. Consider history. Winston Churchill was not without fear during World War II, but he never let it show. He projected calm defiance even when Britain was on the brink of destruction. His emotional control turned despair into resilience for millions. Contrast this with rulers who allowed paranoia or panic to dominate their decisions. Their loss of control was visible, and it destroyed them. In everyday life, the same principle applies. A parent who constantly loses their temper becomes ineffective. Children stop taking the anger seriously. But a parent who remains calm most of the time, yet shows anger with precision, commands respect. The controlled display makes the emotion powerful. Philosophically, the Stoics taught that emotions themselves are not the problem. The problem is enslavement to them. To be ruled by anger, fear, or envy is weakness. To rule those emotions and release them like arrows when needed is strength. Machiavelli would agree. Mastery of self is the foundation of mastery over others. Emotions are not meant to be suppressed. Suppression creates explosions later. They are meant to be mastered, sharpened, and deployed like weapons. A smile can disarm suspicion. A pause can create tension. Silence can instill fear. The cold-blooded do not lack emotion. They wield it with precision. In final words, Machiavelli never wrote for the comfortable. He wrote for those who understood that power is not about ideals, but about survival. Across these lessons, one truth emerges again and again. To rise and to stay at the top, you must be willing to see human nature for what it is, not for what you wish it were. People are driven by fear, desire, and self-interest. They will betray when convenient, they will abandon when conditions change, and they will take advantage of kindness when it is not backed by strength. To be cold-blooded does not mean to be inhuman. It means to be clear-eyed, to strip away illusions, and to act with precision, even when it feels uncomfortable. Power is not sustained by charm alone. It is protected by reputation, by calculated cruelty, by control over perception, and by the ability to separate decisions from emotions. The leader who hesitates, who trusts blindly, who indulges in mercy without calculation, will be devoured by those who do not share the same illusions. The leader who acts coldly when necessary, and who understands that fear lasts longer than gratitude, endures. The psychology of power is simple but brutal. Those who control themselves can control others. Those who weaponize reputation rarely need to draw their sword. Those who master the darker truths of human nature shape history, while those who cling to comforting lies become its victims. Machiavelli's message remains the same today as it did centuries ago. If you want power, do not be naive. Do not waste time hoping people will be better than they are. Instead, become disciplined, precise, and cold-blooded. Because in a world ruled by self-interest, only those who accept the truth about human nature can rule it. Thank you for watching.